Introducir brevemente a las comunidades por las que, bueno, que nos hemos juntado para organizar este evento. Por un lado está Coruña WTF, que es la comunidad local que nos juntamos una vez al mes para hablar sobre web. Nos podéis buscar en Eventbrite o también tenemos un canal de Telegram de la comunidad. Y por el otro lado está Gpool, que Bryce, si quieres venir a dar unas palabritas de qué es Gpool y por qué mola Gpool y tendríais que estar todos dentro.
Vale, pois nada, benvidos todos e todas. Eu son Brais de Gpool, veño en representación de Gpool, que é a asociación que se chama Grupo de Programadores e Usuarios de Linux. O que facemos basicamente é promover, sobre todo no mundo universitario, pero vamos máis aló do mundo universitario, promovemos o software libre, vale? Entonces, facemos diversas actividades de todo tipo, de charlas a eventos máis grandes como pode ser Atlántica Conf, que igual vos sona porque en un mes aproximadamente, bueno, algo menos, de feito, 3 semanas, verdad? 3 semanas, temos un evento que é a maior ou unha das maiores conferencias tecnolóxicas aquí en Galicia, vale? E vai ser na Facultade de Informática. Podedes buscala por aí, se buscades Atlántica Conf, e a Gpool podes nos seguir buscando Gpool ou entrando en gpool.org e nada, estamos encantados de colaborar con este evento e darlle a benvida galega a toda esta xente que nos ven falar do futuro do JavaScript. Entonces, pois nada, moitas gracias.
Gracias, Bryce. Vale, y ya por último ya os dejo yo en paz y empezamos con lo verdaderamente interesante que supongo que estaréis esperando con ansias. No puedo irme sin agradecer a los patrocinadores, que sin ellos pues no podríamos estar en este sitio, ni podríamos después disfrutar de un networking con pinchos y con refrescos y cañas. Y también, bueno, y por supuesto para poder traer a toda esta gente. Entonces quiero agradecer, por un lado, a Kelea, que nos ha facilitado el poder estar aquí, y que Cristian también pues, nos va a contar un poquito a qué se dedican y qué hacen, muy brevemente, seguro, ¿verdad?
No, brevemente será. Bueno, bienvenidos a todas y a todos a este complejo de la ciudad de las TIC. Voy a gritar un poco más, me acabo de enterar que el micro solo es para la gente que está en streaming, así que bueno, si no me escucháis me decís. Pero bueno, eso es un placer para nosotros que estéis en este complejo de la ciudad de las TIC. Yo soy Cristian, soy el responsable de tecnología dentro de Kelea, que estamos pues, ahí detrás. Y como sabréis, pues, o los que no lo sabéis, tenemos dos áreas principales, ¿no? Una más centrada en la consultoría y otra más centrada en la tecnología. Dentro de esto, uno de nuestros pilares fundamentales es el front y todo lo que viene siendo desarrollo, ¿no? Entonces, pues bueno, el hecho de que esté aquí la comunidad de C39, que le da forma al presente y al futuro de JavaScript, es un honor. Así que nada, bienvenidos, espero que disfrutéis la tarde y nada, luego nos conoceremos.
Gracias, Cristian. Vale. Bueno, el siguiente de nuestros patros es Igalia, que es una empresa de software libre. No sé si Ana quieres venir a contar algo o lo cuento yo. ¿No? ¿Así? Esto acaba de ser una emboscada con todos los nombres, con todas las letras, así que... Pero ella nos lo cuenta mejor que yo.
Sí, bueno, no contaba que iba a hablar, pero Igalia es una consultoría de open source aquí de Coruña. Y estamos recibiendo al comité de TC39 que van a presentar aquí. Es un honor como empresa y queremos compartir todo ese conocimiento, no quedar solo en nuestra oficina, también con vosotros. Entonces, gracias.
Gracias, Ana. Pues eso, Igalia como empresa de software libre yo creo que es referente aquí, así que todos los que queráis aportar, aprovechar, acercaros por ahí con Ana y hablad mucho con ella, con toda la gente que está en Igalia. Y por último, me quedaría Zephyr, pero no os voy ya a robar más tiempo porque después nos van a contar y hacer una mini demo del producto súper chulo que tienen, así que nada, vamos a darle el aplauso a Luca, que nos va a hablar de Free JavaScript y nada, todos tuyos.
Thank you very much for that introduction. I hope you can all hear me well. I'm Luca. I am a software engineer at Dino. Some of you may know what Dino is. It's a JavaScript runtime like Node.js, but slightly different, interesting. You may have heard of it. I'm going to be talking today about the trademark for JavaScript. How many of you knew that JavaScript was trademarked? OK, like 35%. How many of you know who owns the JavaScript trademark? And I'm going to give you some hints. OK, so it could be one of these. We're going to start off with Google. Anybody here? No. Skip over a couple. The OpenJS Foundation. Anybody knows what the OpenJS Foundation is? It's the people that create Node.js. ECMA International, the standards body where JavaScript is created, would be a logical place, right? Do you think it's there? Nobody really? Come on, guys. Igalia? It's directly here in Coruña? No, it's none of these. It's Oracle, the company that is best known for being a legal company that has an engineering division. Unfortunately, Oracle does not really build any JavaScript products, but we'll get to that in a second. How many of you know what the JavaScript standard actually calls JavaScript the language? OK, a couple. ECMAScript. And this is a quote from the creator of JavaScript. ECMAScript was always an unwanted trade name that sounds like a skin disease, from 2006. I think this is pretty accurate, right? Nobody calls it ECMAScript. It's JavaScript. And because of this trademark situation, we ended up with a bunch of these names. Why do you think there's not a single conference in the world called JavaScript Conference? Because Oracle. So we end up with JSConf, OpenJS Foundation, ECMAScript, all of these weird names to describe a language that everybody calls JavaScript, but legally is Oracle's. So we decided that this was a not so great situation, so we wrote a letter to Oracle titled, Oracle, it's time to free JavaScript. Some of you may have seen this. You can read it in full at javascript.trademark.tm. If you ask about that TLD, you can talk to me later. So we sent Oracle a letter with a couple of things in it. Firstly, the overarching theme of this article was we don't think Oracle has any right to use the JavaScript trademark. We think they're not using it properly. The first claim here is that Oracle abandoned the JavaScript trademark. How many of you know what trademark abandonment is? OK, a couple. So trademark abandonment is when you register a trademark and then don't use it. That's illegal. You cannot do that. If you register a trademark, you have to use it. Otherwise, you cannot keep owning that trademark, at least in the US. It's slightly different in other places, but that's how it is in the US. Oracle is in the US, so following US law here. Claim 2, JavaScript is generic. Oh, actually, before we go on with this, does any of you know any products that Oracle creates that involve JavaScript? OK, he worked at Oracle, I mean. Past tense, he worked at Oracle, so no hate towards it. And one other person over there. Oracle, well, we'll get to what Oracle does in a second. Second claim, JavaScript is generic. Do you know what a generic trademark is? One person, OK. See, we have to catch up here on trademark law. A generic trademark is a trademark that people don't associate with a specific business, but with a type of product. So, for example, I unfortunately don't know a generic Spanish trademark, so you're just going to have to come up with one. But there's a name that people say, which is actually the brand of a product, but really they say it when they mean any product of that type, right? Aspirin, exactly. JavaScript is that. JavaScript has a bunch of engines, V8 in Chromium, or SpiderMonkey in Firefox, or JavaScript Core which is also not called JavaScript Core, it's called JSC in WebKit. All of these are implementations of JavaScript, right, that are not related to Oracle in any way. Before we get to the third claim, we need to understand how trademark renewal works. And looking at the previous raise of hands, I'm going to assume you don't know how that works either. It's every couple of years you have to submit to the trademark office in the US that you're still using the trademark, what you're using it for, and why you should keep it. And if you don't do this, the trademark expires. And so one of those things that you have to submit is what you're using the trademark for. So Oracle, at some point in 2019, when they last had to renew, had to come up with the list of products that Oracle uses JavaScript in. And this is what they came up with, Node.js. Node.js is not created by Oracle. It is not associated with Oracle in any way. They don't maintain it. No relation, nothing at all. And the second product they submitted is like a framework that they published to NPM. Okay? Those are the two things that they submitted. And that's illegal. You're not allowed to say things to the government that are untrue. So the third claim that we have is Oracle committed fraud. So they've willfully, intentionally deceived the government to renew the trademark. So what we did at this point is we filed a petition, which is like an official document with the US government, saying that we don't think Oracle should have the trademark because they lied, they don't use it, and it's generic. Okay? So this is what this looks like. It looks like a lawsuit, sort of. We file it with the US Patent and Trademark Office, which is, they internally have something like a court that will decide over these called the Trademark Trial and Appeal Board. And we submitted like a, 4 or 5 page document that outlines all of the things I just told you, but in like legal speak. Yeah, and we did that last year in September. We heard a couple things back from Oracle. First of all, obviously, they don't think that they're doing anything wrong because, again, Oracle is a, there we go, is a bunch of lawyers with an engineering division. So obviously, they don't think they did anything wrong. But yeah, we're going back and forth now, and we think like maybe in 2 years this will be resolved and the JavaScript trademark will be free. But until this time, the legal company with the engineering division still gets to keep the JavaScript trademark. So yeah, that's how we're going to free JavaScript. I work at Dino. If you want to learn more about that, you can talk to me or follow DinoLand to stay up to date with that. Yeah, thank you so much.
Sobre algo que se os haya quedado ahí, ¿no? Vale.
Feel free to talk to me later. Oh, you have a question. Oh, no? Okay. Okay.
Vale. Pues nada, ahora es el turno de Emily y Uxwell, que nos van a hablar cómo arreglar los problemas de la localización. Y los tenemos ahí ya, creo que preparados. ¿Estamos? ¿Correcto? ¿Qué tal se escucha por ahí al final? ¿Necesita regular?
Oh.
Pues aquí hay un montón de sillas vacías. Yo os invito a que os mováis y así estáis más cerquita, escucháis mejor.
There we go.
Pues veniros. No muerden. Hablan en inglés, pero no muerden. ¿No? Nadie más anima a venir. No te acompañan, Robert. No.
Okay. Yeah.
¿Estamos listos? ¿Sí?
Yep. We're good. Yeah.
Pues nada, le damos un aplauso y empezamos.
So, hi. We're going to fix all of your problems for localization.
Which is the #1 problem in Galicia.
#1 problem in the, yeah. But hi, this is Ujwal?
Yes.
Who's going to click the, go.
Yeah. So here's me, very recent photo. I am from Delhi in India. You know me, some of you maybe. I live here, and what's interesting about me, not much. I work on the web. I like open source software, some terrible video games that cause permanent brain damage, and I work at Egalia. And you're gonna hear more about what we do.
So, hi, again, I'm Emily. I work at Mozilla. Small company, we do this browser thing you might have heard of. It's better than all the other browsers, don't listen to them. But in any case, I work on a bunch of other stuff as well. Message format is close to what we're talking here about. And then also, I think I can claim to be the only person in the world that works on both localization in terms of human language translation and so on, and localization in terms of how do you get these underwater robotic floats to find where they are when they're moving around underwater. I'm partly working finally on my dissertation, which has been delayed for quite a while. Not talking about that here. I could, but you're not the right audience for that. Probably.
Maybe.
But yeah. So localization is hard. I come from Finland. Finland is a bilingual country, so it's like 5% Swedish, and the rest of the country is 95% nominally about Finnish, but then like everyone speaks English. So no matter what you do on the web, you're gonna have to do in at least 2 different languages, Finnish and either Swedish or English or all 3. So localization is like everything. I'm sure you guys know nothing at all about any of this. I mean, all of you are working on just products in a single language, which is, of course, no. Localization is hard, and often you end up making early, maybe incorrect choices because they're difficult, and a lot of the time localization ends up being built out of things that are monoliths or silos. These are grain silos, hence the art. Most of the pictures here will have some resemblance to what we're talking about. Not all of them, sorry about that, not sorry. Silos where you end up picking some solution that works on localization, and I'm gonna guess that most of you are developers of one sort or another. Put your hand up if you're not a developer. There's one, but but the point is that most of the time, the solutions for localization end up being picked by people who are not actually necessarily doing the localization work themselves. So you end up choosing solutions that feel like they might work, but then they end up having issues maybe later. And then you get stuck with it. And more silos, because silos are cool. And there's a lot of silos, and you can't really get rid of them. You might be able to upgrade them, but often to replace one, you need to replace the whole thing of what you're doing with a different solution, and that's usually a hard enough problem that you don't. You just stick with the thing you started with, and for localization, the problem here is that most of the solutions kind of almost work. And it's the edge cases that become difficult. We're here to talk about a solution that's going to fix all that by providing like support for all the edge cases as well. But the edge cases are hard. I'm sure you know nothing about this when you're taking a language, a phrase in English and translating it to whatever language is the right language that you presented to your users. The example I tend to use is Finnish. We don't do pronouns in Finnish. He, she translate to the same thing, and then quite often it also translated the same thing, or you use the word for it for people, but you use the word nominally in Finnish for people, possibly for pets. It gets interesting. So it's kind of simpler nominally, but then also we do suffixes in Finnish. This is a stage, lava, but I am on the stage, lavalla. Now I'm in front of the stage, lavan edessä. It's like this for everything. One popular example to use for this is the single word syömäisillänsäkään, not even on the verge of eating. And okay, you don't necessarily use this word often, but this is how you construct Finnish as a language. And you start from English, and getting from an English phrase to something in Finnish often means that you need to map things to different dimensions than what you have in English. And even in English, you end up with weird things that you need to depend on, but we're not going to get into that because I'm rambling here and going on. And all of this is like hard. And all of this takes huge ages to try and fix. And we're doing this in a way where we're not trying to just provide a ready implementation and solution, but Ujwal and I, along with a bunch of other people, have been working on creating a standard solution for localization that works really well. And most of that work has been undergoing in the Unicode consortium. Unicode, you probably know UTF-8, UTF-16, emojis. All of these are some of the things that the Unicode consortium is known for, but there's also a lot of locale-related data. And it ends up being the right place for defining something like a new message format, which is what we've done. This work started really in 2013. And then it sat for ages waiting for a solution. And 2019 is when we started to meet weekly. So all of this is a bit of a COVID project for some of us. It's just taken until like literally some months ago that we finally called the thing ready. And the thing is
message format. So let's give you a quick rundown. Is this problem space hard? We already know it is. Do we understand this? Probably not. And so we're trying everything. We're trying to have our cake and eat it too, as to whatever extent that is even possible. So I'm going to give you a quick rundown of the syntax we build, everything that goes behind it, and why we're trying to achieve what is probably infeasible, but we're still at it. So here's the syntax. You can see there's two parts to this. One is the message itself, and the other is what we call the data model. Quick show of hands, how many of you know what an abstract syntax tree is, for instance? Right, a few of you. An abstract syntax tree is a fancy way of saying object in memory that represents what your code looks like, but after processing it. So it's not just text, it's some structure associated with it. And that's kind of what the data model is in many ways to message format messages. But it encapsulates a very important part that you'll figure out as we go. But the general idea where you're going to see here, the pattern, is that while the syntax aims to be powerful and simple and readable and everything, the data model simultaneously, for the same stuff, tries to be as general and as open-ended as possible to achieve basically everything. So the simplest messages for peak simplicity are just text, because text mode first. 80% or more, in many cases, of strings that are going to be on your website or any other interface are going to be static. Like, would they change for every locale and culture and language? Of course. But do they have any dynamic text within themselves? Maybe not. So to make this case simpler, we have the simplest type, as you can see in the data model, which is a simple message, which has nothing else. So it has a pattern, but this pattern is just a string. How can we make this more complex? Now, what's the first thing that might come to your mind? Well, what if I want to put a variable in that, right? So we start with having some complexity beyond this. So the first thing we have is placeholders. Take a guess. What does that line do? Like, what is that message trying to do? None of you probably know this syntax, but can you guess, by a quick show of hand, if you will, what it does? Very few of you, but I would have assumed. I mean, haven't you written PHP or something? But like the dollar sign basically points to the fact that place is a variable, and this variable is being put in place. And the braces are pointing to the fact that the expression starts and finishes somewhere. So you have an expression within the message, and within that expression, you're computing what the value of this variable is. In this case, it's the variable place. And as you can see, the message, the data model version of it is able to express this complexity. So now, well, there's still no declarations here. We're going to get to that later. But the pattern has become a bit more complex, right? There's two static string parts, the beginning and the end. Those remain as is. But there's a new thing here, and that's a object of type expression. So now we have an expression inside. It's a variable. It's a very simple expression, probably the simplest expression. But, you know, like now you suddenly have the ability to put any arbitrary variable inside of your message. And this starts to cover even more of the pie. How many of your messages are probably just some static text, a variable, some static text, a variable, and keep on with that. So you see how, over time, you'll see more and more complexity, of course, because we need to handle some of the most ambitious use cases that we need to handle. But the simplest things try to be simple so that people actually do them instead of just looking at the format and not use it. We have markup, for instance. As you might notice, it looks familiar, but at the same time, it's not really. And this is on purpose. It looks like markup, but at the same time, it's made to be very neutral. There's some things, for instance, where it intentionally supports features that, for instance, you wouldn't see on HTML, on Android. And the idea is for it to have the kind of freedom to be used in any platform, in any environment where you might have some kind of markup, you might have some inline styling or some other kind of elements interspersed in the message. So in this case, we have a link tag, and it closes at the end. And as you can see, so now I've replaced the actual object with the shape of the object. So it's a TypeScript-like interface. And you can see that there's 3 kinds of these markup tags. There's open, close, and standalone, like images and other things that don't have an open and closing tag. And then you have different kinds of things like options and attributes, like UID is an attribute. So, the idea is for the syntax to be simple and for the data model to be versatile enough to handle everything that you can throw at it. And at the end of the day, the implementation can get to choose what does markup even mean. Maybe I'm in Android and markup means something completely different from on a CLI. Then you have more complex expressions. So here we have something similar to what you had earlier, where we have hello, username, But what's more interesting is that on the other expression, you can see some more interesting things happening. So now we have a total tag, and here in this expression, we're calling a function. Now this is a relatively new syntax, for me at least, for functions, but again, the idea is for it to be as versatile, as open-ended as possible. And the idea basically is that you have a variable, that is the operand, then you have the function, or in this case, operator, to stick with our terminology, and then you have all the options, all the different parameters that you want to apply that function with on the operand. So in this case, we're calling the currency function. This is a formatter that is going to be able to format the currency. So the output is going to be what is expected to generally be the localized form. As you might know, in our case, it's the number, comma, 00, for instance, or whatever, 2 decimal places. But for English, it's a dot. For Swiss, it's like a slash or something. It's all of these rules are encapsulated here in form of just this one function. So the idea is for the functions to do the heavy lifting for you so that the messages are simple, easy to understand, and you more or less get what's happening here. A number is being formatted as a currency, and which currency is that? A euro. And as you can see, the data model for this has these different kinds of things. It has a reference to the function that's being called, because you need to know which function is being called. The attributes is a list of different attributes, and the operand. So yeah, like the expressions keep getting more and more complex. There's functions, there's markup, and ultimately you can put all of these things together into what is a pattern. So you can see the structure emerging, right? At the base of the pyramid is these simple static strings, just bunch of characters that can be in any language, and they just show up. And then you have some kind of interactivity added to it. You have some markup that can demarcate certain parts. And now these things all come together to make a pattern. So a pattern can be either a simple string, we covered those in the beginning. It could be an expression, or it could be a markup, or it could be a combination of all of these. But what happens beyond that? So you can have a bunch of patterns, and these patterns are complex messages, so to say, but that's not the end of it. You can probably want to do more interesting things. And for that, we have the concept of matchers. So now you can put a bunch of patterns together and you can say, well, you know, my message is going to come to this. It's going to see what is the value of count. In this case, we're seeing what is, well, in this case, the number function is being called, which by default is checking for pluralization categories. Every language, as you might know, has multiple plural categories. Spanish, fun fact, has 3, not 2 plural categories. Did you know this? Yes. De millones, right? Like, and you have singular and plural, so one and other, and then you have more. In multiple languages, there's many and few. Arabic has 5, right? 6. Polish has 5. Languages have different plural rules, different categories. Every message means something different. Different languages have different gender rules. Some languages, as we just mentioned, have the same grammatical gender, so a sentence doesn't change no matter who is being talked about. As we well know, in all the languages that are natively spoken here, the gender of the subject can change everything. So that's what we are going for here, that you may be able to call a function if you need to, and then based on the result of that, you pick one of the various different patterns. So as you can see, there's a select message, which is like the overarching structure. It contains all these variants, which is a fancy way of saying it's like a branch, right? Like an if statement or a match statement, literally, and the selectors. So the keys to the value, so to say. So what value needs to be hit for me to go to that branch, to pick that particular pattern. And so, you know, now you can see how all of these smaller building blocks that are relatively simple by themselves can come together, and you can combine them to basically achieve infinite complexity. I mean, it's probably Turing complete at this point. But, well, what's next for us? This is the syntax. We've kind of built it. It does most of the powerful things we want it to do, but most importantly, it's standard. It's very important to point out here that we're not doing anything new here. It was able to, well, okay, we're trying to do some things new, but we're learning from tools and techniques that have been developed over the years. Over at Mozilla, they build Fluent, which is, you know, pretty much the state of the art when it comes to this kind of tools. And that's kind of not what we're going for either. So these are tools, ultimately, and the idea is not to create the ultimate tool. That probably doesn't exist. The ultimate tool changes based on who you are and what you're trying to do. Probably all of what I talked about is overly too complex for what your next project is going to be. The point is to build a standardized set of tools that can be used together to create a real solution. These are kind of like tiny Lego pieces, and that's why I point out the sort of low-levelness of what we're building. The idea is not to build a new internationalization system that you're going to throw into your application and magically it's going to work. The idea is to look at the different systems that exist, to pick a base of these, like, you know, technologies, to pick a set of tools that works for most of them, if not all of them, and all of them, okay, and figure out how can we standardize this? How can we make things more shareable? How can we break the silos, the big-ass silos that we saw earlier? And the only way to do this is to come to a common base of understanding. And that's what this is about. The amino acids are not the end goal here. The end goal is...
The last time we did this presentation, I was doing this part, so he stopped.
I am not sure why this... But no, I mean...
This is about saying that we're not really replacing the silos.
Yeah.
We're not providing you with a new solution, a new silo. What we're doing is we're building building blocks so that the people who built the silos, who sold you the silo, are going to use our building blocks underneath and build on top of those so that the solutions become interoperable with each other, even if they currently are not.
Yeah. And when you build your next silo, instead of throwing the existing one away, you can take it apart and build the new one out of it.
Yeah. And going a little bit beyond what we've already done, one of the next steps that we're looking at is what happens beyond a single message. Because usually, no, always, when you have a single message that you're localizing, you don't only have a single message, you have a whole bunch of them, and they have some relation to each other. So we're working on a new resource format, a file format effectively for how do you hold all of these together, and also how do you attach properly metadata to these so that your translators in particular can work really well with what we've got, so that the ultimate user experience is going to be really quite nice. And way beyond that still is we're hopefully going to get all of this supported all the way in HTML. So one of the next goals, us as JavaScript, I don't know how you call us. We're developing JavaScript, the language, so we're kind of JavaScript developers, but it doesn't sound the same. One of the proposals we're working on is intel.message format, a JavaScript API for using the syntax that was presented here. But beyond that, we're kind of hoping to be able to introduce into HTML the capability of referring to a resource with messages in a very similar way that you can do with CSS these days. I'm like old in internet years. I remember when CSS came and was a really cool thing, where I'm very optimistic about eventually being able to introduce content, localizable content as a thing you can use in HTML the same way that you can style things in HTML with CSS with a separate resource that then kind of just works. This still requires a couple of further standardization steps. And then one of the most important parts here is that what we have described to you in probably more verbosity than you thought you cared is a sufficient representation of everything that every existing message formatting and localization system does. And it is, as far as we know, sufficient for representing any message with dynamic content that reasonably could be used in a user interface of some sort. And this means that the data model and that sort of approach does not just work for the syntax that we presented. That data model works for every single other message formatting standard there is. So what we're providing is a tool that works not just with our toys, but your toys.
Everyone's toys.
Everyone's toys, yes. And it's taken a while, and we're very happy to finally have this thing, have reached the end goal of this, one of the end goals, which is that this is now a part of the Unicode CLDR LDML, starting from version 47, which came out in March this year. And we're still working on iterating slightly better versions of this, but there are now strong stability guarantees in place that this syntax is going to work and it's not going to break going forward. But yeah, that's try it out. My recommendation is that try this out, play with it. I don't know if we'll be able to share the slides with you or if you want to take a picture of this with references to all the things where this is and parts of this are being worked on. Didn't really mention the inflection working group because making inflection happen, much of it is programmatically possible, but it requires like loads of data. There's interesting stuff happening there actively. The Intel message format proposal is the thing that hopefully we're going to have in JavaScript soonish. Not going to make any promises, taking a while. Message resources is part of the work building on top of that. There's a couple of implementations available in JavaScript, in C++, in Java. The Python one does not do formatting, but lets you do all sorts of interesting things. And soonish, also, we're hopefully going to have a Rust implementation. So it's not just JavaScript, but it's a lot of JavaScript.
The whole point of this was to make these tools available to everyone.
But thank you for your time. That's all we had.
Yeah.
Bueno, ¿qué tal vamos? ¿Vamos bien? ¿Sí? Voy a dar una segunda oportunidad para que los del fondo, si quieren acercarse para escuchar mejor. Yo confirmo que no muerden. Sí, por aquí confirman que no muerden. No sé si hay alguien interesado. Tenemos 1, 2, 3, 4 sillas por lo menos, a la de una. Venga, va. Incluso si os queréis sentar juntos, movemos a la gente, ¿no? Venga, va. Perfecto. Vale, pues ¿estamos? Sí. Vale, pues nada, os voy presentando. Ahora vamos a tener a Nick, más conocido como Shark the One, y nos va a presentar Yavashark, un nuevo... me lo ha quitado hoy, no lo puedo leer y ya no me acuerdo. Y eso que lo acabo de ver. Un nuevo motor. Así que, bueno, le vamos a dar un minuto más, que está teniendo problemas técnicos. ¿Qué? ¿Tenéis ya muchas preguntas para después para la ronda de preguntas? ¿Sí? ¿Alguna sí? Bueno, veo a gente aquí con libreta y boli apuntando así. ¿Y el inglés qué tal? ¿Cómo lleváis el hacer preguntas en inglés? ¿Alguien va a un traductor? ¿No? ¿Todo el mundo? Va, perfecto, maravilloso. Así me gusta, porque yo no tenía pensado traduciros, la verdad. Así que está bien. ¿Estamos? ¿Sí? Uy. ¿Es un ahí?
So I'm going to present about Yavashark. So
A little bit louder.
Sorry?
Louder.
Yeah. So I'm going to present to you about Yavashark. It's a new JavaScript engine. I'm doing that for the first time, so be with me. So I will also make mistakes, and it would be nice to get some feedback from you later. So first, who I am. So I'm Nick. I'm one of the core members of the Go browser. So this is like a new browser engine, just like Chromium or Firefox. And this is also where Yavashark found its like roots, and I created it then. So I also have like the contact information later on also. So first of all, what is my goal with the engine? I want to like improve the JavaScript engine diversity. So you have like 3 of the major engines and some new upcoming ones. And I also want to help improve the diversity of that. At the same time, I also want to like provide native TypeScript support. So for example, like most engines only provide like actual JavaScript support with no ability to directly run TypeScript code with like type information. So for example, like Node or Dino can nowadays like run with TypeScript, but they're not using the types to speed up the code, and that's something I want to do. I want my engine to be quite customizable, so you can also embed it and extend it. Also, 2 of the most important things, like learn new things and also have fun. So what exactly is JavaScript? So I said it is a JavaScript engine, it's not in runtime. So the difference might not be obvious, so I created like a little graphic. So runtimes are like, as previously also mentioned, like Dino, Node, and Bun. And those have like custom APIs, for example, like the console.log API is like nothing that's in the engine, it's something that the runtime needs to provide. It also drives kind of the event loop, and it then also embeds the JavaScript engine. And the engine is responsible for running the code and also like handling memory and scoping and all of the more internal stuff. It also provides like all of the intrinsics. So for example, like the math object or the number object. It also like provides some primitives to run the event loop, or for the engine to be able to run the event loop. So my engine is quite embeddable. So one of the goals was also to have it like not like some huge code base you need or some huge code you need to have for it to be set up. You can actually like just write one line and give it your code you want to run, and it will run it. So it's like very simple setup. I also want to add like C bindings in the future, so you can add it in even more projects, because the current one is like just in Rust, which is also the language I have written the engine in. So you can very easily extend my engine via like native code. And there is also like systems in place, so you can automatically convert values. So normally you have like JavaScript values, which can be like any kind of value. So it can be like it can be like a string or a number, but native code doesn't really like that. So I have like a quick example here. So you see, I think you see my mouse cursor. Oh. So this is like the struct file system, and it is made an object with the macro above. And so it's like an object in JavaScript, even though it's like a native struct. With the properties new, so it's like the newest version of 8 I have. You create like you can like attach like the properties to it. In my case, it's like only one function, and the raw in here specifies that it's like directly on the struct, on the object itself, and not on the prototype. So it essentially acts like a namespace. Then you have like the actual function, so it takes in a path, and it's a string. And you notice it's like an ampersand string. So that's like the Rust way of telling, okay, I want like an actual string and not a JavaScript value. And the macro, so this macro here, the properties macro, will then automatically generate bindings to convert all of the JavaScript values, so also from the return type, to something that's usable in JavaScript itself. And like this is like just, and in the function there is like the relatively basic Rust code, so everyone who has probably used Rust will probably understand what is going on here. So this is like a quick overview of the architecture. You probably can't read it. I will show it bigger later on. So what's in the like white box is the part I have already implemented, and the other parts are like something I have planned but not yet started. So the first phase, when you give like the engine your code, it uses the parser to generate an AST, so an abstract syntax tree. If you actually have that abstract syntax tree, you have like multiple options. For example, you can first execute it with like a so-called tree work interpreter, so you don't need to do extra work to actually execute your JavaScript. But you can also use the bytecode compiler to compile it to a bytecode, which can also be optimized way better. But this takes time, and you can actually like during the first execution stage, which is the tree work interpreter, you can compile the bytecode, and then if it's ready, switch out the execution phase and use the actual bytecode that is and execute that. If the engine like notices that you're using a function quite often, you can optimize it even further, for example, by using JIT, so it's like just-in-time compilation. And it will actually compile to native assembly, which is then run by your CPU and not like a virtual machine as the bytecode. But in my engine, for that, you first need the bytecode, and it's then translated to like machine code. And that's also like during the bytecode execution, you can then compile the JIT code, so there is like no break in between. And as soon as the JIT code is ready, you can swap out the interpreters. Something I also mentioned is that I want to add TypeScript support. For that, your execution pipeline looks a bit different. So you're starting again with your AST, and then performing a type check on it. So essentially, you know, like, okay, this thing is going to be a number or a string or whatever you have. And it's then generating like a typed representation of your code. The type representation can then also like be compiled with a bytecode. And you notice I'm skipping like the first execution stage because there isn't like really much benefit of having type information there. But with the bytecode, you can like have more specific instructions, for example, for strings or for numbers. When you have your bytecode, you then also have like two options again, like either execute it directly or use the JIT compiler again to compile it to native code. And that's pretty much the whole pipeline that the engine can have. But I also have like another idea, or well, it's not really an idea, but you can optimize it, the compile time completely by compiling all things ahead of time. So that's like really great, for example, for serverless platforms. So if you have like, I don't know, like Cloudflare has like its workers, and you may want to execute JavaScript there, and there is like startup time really important. And so you can do like all your preparations before, so ahead of time. And then the JavaScript engine can just directly execute either your bytecode by using the compiler. So that's like the first stage or the first pass. And then you're having the bytecode and saving that to the disk. And then you're giving the bytecode to the engine, not a JavaScript file. But you also have the option to like completely native compile the code, and then you have like just an executable. I want to do a quick demo of what the engine is currently able to do. So I have different things. First of all, I have implemented like a simple GUI with my JavaScript engine. I don't know if I can make it a bit bigger. So for example, you can have an input here and add a name. So my name is Shark, or Nick if you prefer. You also can dynamically also like add another content. So I have like, I can add a label down here if I press the run button. But you can also like add multiple labels. And then it will also be updated if you run the, if you press the run button. So because of that, it's really dynamic. And all of the GUI logic is implemented in my engine with JavaScript. The second thing I have is the game of life. So this is the game of life in my engine. I can make it slightly bigger so you can see it better. And I can also make it full screen. And the last demo I have is a simple HTTP server. So I can open Chrome. And so you notice it's on the port 8080. And so this is, if I reload the page, this is the page where I like continue tracking my, oh, I actually don't have internet, that's why it doesn't show up. So this is the page normally where I tracking like how much progress I have made in implementing like the JavaScript specification. I'm like at around 30% there. And so if I cancel the thing, it's also not loading the site. So you can see it's like actually using my engine for the HTTP server. Lastly, I want to give you my contact information. So either I have Matrix, Discord, or you can also reach out to me by email. And I would really like to have feedback for my talk because it's the first one I have actually given. I noticed I probably should speak louder, but that's it for me. Thank you.
Gracias. Bueno, pues nada, ¿qué tal? ¿Ya estáis mejor? Sí, por ahí atrás yo sigo pensando que no escucháis nada. Sigue habiendo sitios por aquí. Os doy una última oportunidad. ¿No? Bueno. Pues le vamos a dar un minutito a Oliver para que se prepare, para que lo prepare todo. Nada, bueno, ¿qué? ¿Me contáis algo o me vais a hacer pensar qué contaros yo? A ver, ¿quién de aquí está en alguna comunidad y asiste alguna vez a algún meetup o...? Bueno, ¿quién no? ¿Quién no? ¿Hay alguien que no? Que no vaya, o sea, alguien que no vaya, no esté en alguna comunidad o no vaya a algún meetup. No, todo el mundo estáis, bien, así me gusta, así me gusta. Bueno, pues entonces supongo que ya os habréis enterado de que este fin de semana es la datolada, de que la Atlántica es entre semanas. Hay muchas chicas guapas e interesantes en la Atlántica, hay varias. Sí, en la Atlántica hay muchas y en la datolada. Así que nada, a todas las chicas por aquí, os invito a que sigáis animándoos a participar en charlas. Seguimos teniendo problemas técnicos, voy a seguir dando aquí el rollo un rato. Vale, luego también tenemos evento de Coruña WTF el día 5, por si os interesa. David Side Projects. Así que si alguno tenéis ahí un proyecto que vais haciendo en vuestros ratos libres y queréis saber cómo ganaros la vida con ello, intentarlo, pues será el día 5, como decía. Y no sé, a ver, ¿cómo vamos? Y seguimos en ello, vale. Vale, el evento es en las oficinas de Angular, al lado del Mooncit. Lo podéis encontrar en Eventbrite y quedan muy poquitas plazas, así que si os interesa, os recomiendo que os apuntéis porque si no igual es tarde. No sé si alguien más tiene algo por ahí que quiera compartir con todo el mundo. ¿Alguien sabe alguno de los que no? Creo que ahora Gpool no tiene ninguno. Creo, no sé, Gpool ahora mismo no. No. Están, va, claro. Tiene sentido. ¿Estamos listos? ¿Sí?
Thanks. I have no slides, I will just demo. So compiling ahead of time is pretty new, and I will just demonstrate why it's cool instead of talking. So say I have a cool file I want to just have like a hello world. So I can run this with Node. Yeah, so I can run this file with Node. It just works. But say I want to just run this as like a exe file, a binary on my machine. There's some ways you can do that now, like say Dino. So I have a binary I can just run on my machine, which is nice, but it is kind of big, which is not ideal. But like, to be fair, like you can do the same with something like bun, which is supposed to be faster, which it is, but you could do the same. And yeah, it works nice, but it's still very big. So if only you could just run a tool and you just have a binary which works, and it's 20 kilobytes. So yeah, so essentially compiling ahead of time is, instead of just sticking something like Node, which like your entire runtime to a file, you treat it like it was C, C++, Rust, and you just compile that itself. So like I can still change the file to do like 1 + 2, hopefully that works. Or like what's the date right now? And then you can just compile it again, have some warnings, or have some warnings, but live demos. Yeah, the other nice thing is that so you might think, oh, it's small, but like it's gotta have some downside. Like it's really slow, uses loads of memory. So if you benchmark each one of them, like say I have Dinos, buns, and the one my project made. If you just benchmark them quickly, and I zoom out. So yeah, so I do use 99% less memory as a casual flex, I guess. So yeah, instead of like 70 or 40 megabytes of memory, it uses 1, and it runs in less than a millisecond, which is pretty nice. So the main downside is you have to reinvent the entire JS engine, so that's a lot of work. So this is like 2 years of work to get to this level. But it works with about half of the specification, so about half the things you write will work, essentially. So yeah, to dive more into it, my actual slides. So yeah, other JS engines exist today. They're used in Node, Bun, Chrome, Firefox. So you have interpretation, which is the kind of classical technique of you just run it in an interpreter, which is great for, like, say, memory usage, but really slow. Then just-in-time compilation, which is like what V8 is famous for, which is great because it's really fast. But then also you have to compile that, which is slow on, say, like an old Android phone. The security can be questionable at best. So yeah, most browsers have to have like 3 different just-in-time compilers inside of them because each one is faster than the next, but also slower to run. So yeah, ahead of time is like C++ or Rust. You just have a binary. The only problem is just doing that is very hard. So yeah, you have most of the downsides of just-in-time gone. So yeah, compiling JS to native is nice because you can just click a binary and it runs. You don't have to tell your users to install Node 20 point something. So yeah, Pour4 is the name of the project, and that's what it does. To quickly run through, it essentially just is like a compiler, like say Clang or GCC, but takes in JavaScript instead of C. So yeah, it's very complicated under the hood, but yeah, it can also do TypeScript. And yeah, the main downside is you have to reinvent the entire wheel, which is not really hard, but just very time-consuming. So yeah, Test 262 is the official JS test suite. It currently passes around almost 60%. And yeah, this is all public on GitHub. It's entirely written in JavaScript and TypeScript. The code is pretty simple for like a compiler or JS engine. So yeah, thanks. You can follow on these social medias.
Muchas gracias, Oliver. Luego tendremos un ratito para hacerte preguntas. No me está entendiendo, pero yo se lo digo igual. Vosotros sí. Vale, pues nada, pues vamos a dar paso a la última charla de la tarde. Sentimos un poco el ruido, pero están llegando la vez, así que les vamos a dar permiso que haga un poco de ruido por lo que viene después. Y nada, pues le damos unos minutitos para que se prepare. Nada, ¿tenéis hambre, sed? ¿Cómo vamos por ahí? Bien, así. Bueno, pues nada, pues a ver qué nos están preparando por ahí atrás. Ah, vale. Ahora os hablo con 2 micros. Que sepáis que este o sea, lo teníamos ahí, pero queríamos que os acercáramos y que os acercarais, y si hablamos con este, ya sabemos que os vais a poner no en la última fila, sino en la puerta. Así que nada, os engañamos un poco. Lo cierto es que no, y gracias, Mónica, por venir a salvarnos y traernos el micro. Mejora sustancialmente la cosa. Así que nada, ¿cómo vamos por aquí? Estamos en ello. Vale. Pues nada, ¿qué creéis que tenemos por allí detrás? Yo la verdad es que sorpresa. ¿Queréis que hagamos una porra de qué vamos a comer después? ¿Empanada? No tengo yo muy claro, ¿eh? Yo creo que tenemos tortilla. Tortilla me parece ver así desde lejos. Algo me suena de jamón. Creo que algo de jamón también va a haber. Bueno, aquí a la gente de fuera le tenemos que dar producto local y que quieran volver. ¿Ya estamos? ¿Sí? Perfecto, pues nada, pues le vamos a dar un aplauso a Oliver, que nos va a hablar de números en JavaScript y a ver qué tiene que contar.
Okay, hi everyone. Thanks for having me here. My name is Shane. I'm the convener of ECMA TC39 TG2. That is the task group in TC39 that's in charge of internationalization and localization. making sure that JavaScript works well across many languages. I'm also chair of the Unicode, and Unicode, the IC4X technical committee. We're building the modern, lightweight, portable, and secure internationalization library for Unicode. I also I'm also a staff engineer at internationalization engineering at Google, but this talk is not on behalf of Google. So, what is my talk about? My talk's about numbers. I'm going to show you a few claims, and I'm going to back those claims up with some evidence. So my first claim today is that the JavaScript number type is confusing and prone to bugs. So let me show you what I mean here. What is a number? So what is the number 0.1? In fact, in memory, it is this. It is a binary number with many different parts. What are those parts? There's a sign bit, there's an exponent, and there's a mantissa. You can put those together and do a little formula, and this is what 0.1 is in your computer. 0.1 followed by some zeros, followed by about 30 other significant digits, and ending with a very nice 625 at the end there, because it's a power of 2. So 0.1 really is 0.1. In fact, a number can be interpreted in 2 different ways, and this is a key point that is unintuitive for me, unintuitive for many people even who've worked with numbers for many years. There's 2 ways to interpret it. One is you can interpret it as the shortest round-trip decimal, which is here on the left side. You can also interpret it as the binary representation. So these are 3 floating point numbers, which in fact are right next to each other in binary representation. They differ from each other by only 1 bit at the very, very end of the number, and you can see the difference between those 3 values. In fact, both of these representations are currently in JavaScript. On the left, this is the interpretation if you call the toString function on a number, the number prototype toString, also number prototype toExponential, returns the value on the left. On the right, you get that if you call number prototype toFixed or toPrecision, you'll get the representation on the right. So in fact, both of these representations are in JavaScript. There are many algorithms for converting between the 2, which again is shipped in every engine because every engine supports both interpretations of a number. When you do arithmetic on numbers, as you might guess, it is in binary. That is why you might have seen this before. If you have 0.1, which you just saw on the previous page, is actually not exactly 0.1, and you add 0.2, you get 0.3, followed by many, many zeros, followed by a 4 at the end. And that's because it's done in the binary space. So this is actually correct, because if you take the full numbers and you add them together, and then you get the closest floating point number to the result, it is actually this one that's shown here. And this is just how binary floats work. It's how they've worked for decades at this point, right? Okay, so what about big int? So big int works fine, but only represents integers. And what we would like to have is a numeric type that works as people expect it to work, but also works with any arbitrary number of decimal precision and numbers after the decimal separator. Okay, so that's my first claim. My first claim was that JavaScript numbers are prone to causing bugs and errors. My second claim is that JavaScript numbers are insufficient for solving problems that we see on the web platform. So what do I mean here? The first area where it's insufficient is that it does not contain a precision. What does that mean? If you have un estrella, that's not the same as un punto cero estrellas, I believe, right? Because they have different plural forms, and this is in most languages actually have something kind of like this, right? Why do we want to actually exactly express the precision? The first is that we want to do the correct thing with localization. We want to have INTL number format, plural rules, and message format all work harmoniously together. We want to have interop with systems that retain the precision, because in fact, in Python, in Java, in many other programming languages that have decimals, they have supported this concept of precision for many, many years, and we want to be able to interoperate with those systems. A third is that this is something we see a lot in places like finance and scientific computing. We care about precision. There is actually a difference here because one of them represents, for example, a value in cents. The other represents maybe a value in whole dollars or euros. And those are different values that we want to be able to represent in the data model of the language. Another is potential integration with HTML input elements, which can talk about that later if you'd like to know a little bit more. The second deficiency in the number type is that it has limited significant digits. So it's in fact limited to about 15.95 on average significant digits. This is averaged over because the binary and decimal do not exactly align. So it's not always the exact same number of significant digits, but it averages out to about 15.95 significant digits. Why is this sometimes enough? One is financial transactions can easily exceed this limit. If you have something on the order of $1 trillion or 1 trillion bitcoins or something like that, you quickly exceed the number of significant digits when you go to the fractional portion. The second is interoperability with decimal 128, which again is found in other programming languages that supports 34 significant digits. We would like to be able to interoperate with that. A third, again, is this use case of big data and scientific computing, where you often have numbers that have higher precision. For example, you might have a calculator app that you are using on a website. You want to build a calculator for your website. This might be a use case also that you would like to see. A third deficiency of the number type is that it does not contain the thing being measured. What's the last time that you've had a number and it's just been a number by itself? It's almost always measuring something else. Maybe you have 10 euros, so maybe you have 2,5 metros, so maybe you have 145 correos electrónicos, right? You can have many different things that you're measuring. A use case of a value type represented with this dimension, of course, similar to precision, you want it to be able to integrate nicely with number format and plural rules. You want it to be an app-driven input to something like message format. You saw Emily and Ujwal give a presentation about message format earlier. You want to be able to integrate well with that. And another important one is you want to be able to have an interface for third-party libraries, because if you have many third-party libraries that are consuming these items, this is a quantity that you will often encounter in software, and you want to be able to build many pieces of software that all are able to speak together and interoperate with each other. And it's useful to have a common standard type that these different libraries can use to interoperate with each other. Another is you can have more efficient serialization. I'll show you a little bit of an example of this later in the slide. So I've now told you that JavaScript numbers are error-prone, and they also do not solve all the use cases. Does this sound familiar to anyone? Is there any other case where we may have seen this? In fact, temporal proposal. This is the first paragraph of the temporal proposal. A temporal is a proposal in JavaScript to solve the problem for dates. And I'll go ahead and read just the first sentence of the temporal proposal. It reads, the venerable ECMAScript date object has a number of challenges, including lack of immutability, lack of support for time zones, lack of support for use cases that require dates or times only, a confusing and non-ergonomic API, and many other challenges. If you take the word date and replace it with number, and you replace the use cases with the ones that I had listed on previous slides, you get the motivation for the vision of a unified numerics interface in JavaScript. So what if in JavaScript we had a numerics ecosystem that has arithmetic that works the way the developers think it should work, where 0.1 plus 0.2 is actually 0.3? What if we have something that seamlessly integrates with Intel, improving the quality of the web for multilingual users? What if we had something that provides interoperability, both with JavaScript and with other programming languages? And what if we had something that supports these other use cases like financial representations and operations? I'm going to go ahead and talk to you about how we can do this. We can do this. In fact, we can do it with just two types. The two types we need are decimal, or we could call it numerics.decimal, perhaps. If you want to learn off temporal, we could call it numerics.decimal. This could be a 128-byte decimal 128. It represents a point on the number line similar to number, and it has operations that just work the way that people expect them to work. The other type that we have is the decimal.amount. It could maybe be called numerics.amount if we have a numerics namespace here. It's a decimal, and it also is paired with a precision and a dimension. The precision and the dimension allow us to cover all the other use cases that I mentioned before. It allows us to integrate very well with Intel. This type would not have the direct arithmetic. If you wanted to perform arithmetic, you go to the decimal, you do your arithmetic there, and then go back to amount. And it's focused on interoperability. And of course, all of these are immutable, obviously, right? Just like temporal types are going to be immutable. So let's go ahead and look through what a hypothetical code sample might look like. So maybe I'll go ahead and start, make a decimal, D1, 0.1, and 0.2, and I go ahead and add them together. And let's see what I would get. I should be able to get a 0.3 out the other side because they're decimals and they behave like you think decimals should behave. Now let's go ahead and make that into an amount. I'm going to go ahead and set a precision on my decimal number here, and let's see what that gives me. I asked for 3 fraction digits, and it gave me a decimal with 3 fraction digits. And now let me go ahead and maybe add a unit to it. And it might give me something sort of like this. This is not standardized anywhere. I just put this on a slide so I can demonstrate, but it gives you a number with a unit attached to it. And then my favorite part, since I'm on the internationalization team, is what happens if you call that with a to locale string. You can put whatever language you want in there, like Gallego, and you might get something that actually reads and is nice. And the entire data model is contained in your code, unlike what you normally have to do, which is to set up a very large options bag to get this kind of string out of the web platform. Cool. So I'm just going to go to one other little hot take, is that today in committee, we approved for stage 2 this thing called the pseudo random number generator, which is really cool and really useful. And I think a lot of members of committee thought it was useful, including me. I think that this numeric stuff is at least as useful as the pseudo random number generator. And therefore, I think that if we think that the pseudo-random numbers generator is motivated, I think clearly we have room for the decimal and the amounts type in JavaScript. So this is my conclusion. So on the right side, I've got my Let's Keep in Touch. That's my email. That's my Blue Sky, my GitHub, and my Mastodon, if you'd like to follow me on social media. The key takeaways are that JavaScript number, it's bug-prone. It doesn't play nice with internationalization. It has limited interop with other programming languages, and it doesn't work well for applications like finance. JavaScript's temporal solves an extremely similar type of problem for dates, and it's amongst the most anticipated TC39 proposals. If you ask a JavaScript developer off the street which proposal from TC39 are you most excited about, often they'll say temporal. And so therefore, let's go ahead and work together to build an all-inclusive numerics interface for JavaScript. And that's my pitch. So thank you for listening.
Gracias. Gracias y disculpa, sorry, I called you Oliver instead Shane, sorry. Stay here, please. Bueno, ahora voy a llamar al resto de... Perdón, que estoy aquí con las dos manos, los dos micros. Voy a llamar al resto de ponentes que vengan y que vayan subiendo. Puedes desenchufar el ordenador, no hay problema. Yeah. Lo siento. Mi comunicación y el inglés, ahí hay una barrera considerablemente grande. Vale, podéis tomar asiento, podéis sentaros por aquí, veniros todos. Y nada, pues vamos a hacer una breve ronda de preguntas para que esas cosas que os hayan quedado vamos a... Después los vamos a tener igualmente en el networking, así que vamos a intentar ser breves porque cuanto más tiempo estemos aquí, menos tiempo vamos a estar allí. Así que bueno, yo solamente os lo advierto. Así que nada, ¿quién quiere ser el primer voluntario en hacer una... Bueno, el primer... Vale, por ahí tenemos una pregunta ya. Espera que te acerco el micro para que también quede grabado y todo el mundo escuche. Tienes dos micros.
Cool. Hi, yeah, my question is for the last presenter, sorry. I wanted to ask about the number. How do you get that precision, like if the engine from JavaScript doesn't have that precision like built into it for numbers, how do you get it from this library? Like, are you doing some kind of conversion in the middle between what you're inputting into the engine and what you get, or are you just modifying directly to the engine what the output would be like? Sorry, that's my question.
Yeah, so
wait.
Thank you, gracias. Okay, so I think I showed on the slide an example for where upon the input to the decimal amount type, you might specify the amount of significant digits or the amount of fractional digits that you would like to associate with your decimal amount. So that's one way to get the precision. And the other way is that if you start with a string number, if the string number has trailing zeros, for example, those should be preserved when you parse that into a decimal amount. So those would be the two ways that you would then, you're able to get a decimal amount with you know, a non-zero number of trailing zeros. Does that answer your question? Okay, great.
Vale. A ver, manos arriba. ¿Quién quiere ser el siguiente? ¿Aquí? Vale. Los dos, para que se escuchen en el stream. Sí.
Vale. Hello. First of all, thank you for coming and taking your time to come here to the ThiaStick. I have a question regarding the trademark to Luca. Well, to everyone. What do you expect will happen once Oracle releases the trademark for JavaScript?
So I don't. Okay, yes. Let me get up, actually. Thank you. So I don't think Oracle is going to voluntarily release the trademark. They will release the trademark like lying on the ground, kicking and screaming, right? And the way this will work is that the USPTO cancels their trademark after like, I don't know, 10, 12 back and forths between our lawyer, their lawyer, and the trademark office. The best case scenario is that Oracle understands at the 11th time that they will fail the 12th and like gives the trademark to ECMA, the standards body that maintains the JavaScript trademark. This is very unlikely to happen. Probably the trademark will just go into public domain, and then nobody can register the trademark ever again, and anybody can use it for whatever they want. This is slightly less good because it means that like you could start calling, I don't know, Python JavaScript. And there's nothing anybody could do, but that's better than nobody being able to use the trademark at all. So that's probably what's going to happen.
¿Cuánto menos? Ah, vale. Espera.
Do you have a hashtag or something just to move things, you know?
It's obviously not up there anymore, but if you go to javascript.tm, there's a letter. You can sign in with GitHub and sign the letter. There's like 15,000 people that have already signed the letter. It'll show up on the website, and you'll see all the people that have already signed it. Send it to all your friends. Get everyone to sign it.
All right, hello. So talking about prof, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, I work extensively with systems and with virtual machines and stuff, so I'm actually quite interested in being able to do scripting with JavaScript for once, instead of relying on Python and Bash. So what I wonder is, what are some of the limitations that you can probably think of when it comes to this thing compared to these kind of system tasks, like, for example, managing IP tables and stuff like that?
Yeah, I guess the main limitation is... Yeah, the main limitation is that because it's like a new project, there are no APIs for any of that stuff. Useful. Oh. Because it's a new project, there's no APIs for that type of stuff, so you basically have to do it yourself. Or like I have FFI, for example, so you could just use C libraries. Yeah, the main limitation is that, and because it's ahead of time, like there's no eval, for example. But I think for that type of use case, that's fine. So, yeah.
¿Alguna más? Os doy dos más. ¿Alguien se anima por ahí?
Hello. I wanted to ask, since I've heard about some cases about like under US patent law. I've heard about trademark abandonment, that once you don't defend yourself over a judge, why? Has Oracle actually tried to defend the trademark? And by this I mean, can we just go nuclear and naive a foundation JavaScript and just expect the defense or lack thereof?
Yes, in theory we can, and we have tried this, okay? So this shirt that I'm wearing and this hat over here that says JavaScript, these are both illegal. We sold these for money in the United States on a trademark thing, even though we don't own the trademark. That is illegal. And Oracle did not do anything, which is, that by itself, like not doing it once is not proof of like a pattern, but they also generally have not done this in the past. If a lawyer thinks that it is useful for us to go to the court and say, hey, we did something illegal, but Oracle did something more illegal, you know, you see the problem, right? But probably this will be helpful, yes. So buy JavaScript merch.
Vale, pues una última pregunta. ¿Alguien se anima? Sí. Bueno, esto ya repetir.
So this question is regarding solving the every translation problem. Do you think, do you think that using the with the new use of AI to automatically translate a lot of text? In my case, I came from a background from the video games industry, and in the past, companies used to pay like a crazy amount of money to have like a big data set of every single string translated for the video game. And now that is changing a bit with use of AI to use this. Do you think that maybe in the future that can be a problem for adoption of this new standard that you are working on? By the way, that was a great idea and great talk, yeah.
So, short answer, no, I don't think AI is gonna mean that what we've done has been wasted. But of course I'm gonna say that because I've spent these years working on that, so that's kind of given. But a key part here is that, for example, in a game industry sort of a setting, performance matters. And when you actually need to provide that UX string to the user, you need to do it like this. You can't ask the AI at that moment, please translate this thing into this language and then wait for the result over the network and so on. So you need to have the translation happen ahead of time. The key here is that if you're doing that, the AI system actually looks an awful lot like a human translator in what they're doing. The AI system needs to be given the message in a way that the AI system understands, has this sort of variance, whether it's one message, 42 messages, or whatever it is. And in order to represent the messages in these sorts of format, you need to have the developer be able to provide the message in a way that the AI understands to translate so that it can be used really quickly at runtime. So it's effectively doing the same job as the human translator is doing at this time. So the problem will still need to be solved later. Message format is designed to be primarily originally written by developers who are writing the code and writing the localizable messages. But yes, there is a decent chance that a decent amount of the translation work that is going to be done by AI. And this is already happening, but even more as time goes on. But yeah.
Well, if anything, it becomes easier for AI to produce these translations because now there's a standardized format that everybody is using. All the tools sort of plug into it, and it's well documented, hopefully. It's still in progress, the documentation, but... Yeah.
Yeah, and like even if you think about this one step further where like there's no developer writing the code, but it's an AI writing the code and an AI translating, you still need to have something in the middle that like those two AIs can use to talk to each other, right? Some structured format. And message format is really good at that. It has both the like human readable format and the data model, and you can freely go from one to the other, which makes it really powerful. Like you can review something that the AI wrote as a JSON string in like a human readable message, for example.
Vale, todo. Pues nada, les damos un aplauso enorme por respondernos a todas las preguntas. No sé si os acordáis que cuando empezamos os dije que el último de nuestros patros nos iba a hacer una mini demo que estoy segura que va a ser lo más rápido posible, porque vamos un poco tarde, entre que empezamos tarde y sumamos unos minutos de retraso, así que mientras le damos, cuando estés listo nos avisas. Más cómodo, con uno suficiente. Pínchale ahí bien los micros, por favor.
As quick as possible. So, hello everyone. I'm Nestor. I'm a platform engineer at Zephyr, and we are a cloud platform for building federated applications, not only micro frontends, but that is the most prominent one. And I want to showcase what we do because I think it's really cool, and also because we are hiring. So I'm going to do a little bit of promo if you allow me. So real quick, I want to show up my VS Code with a very basic JavaScript project, right, that everyone knows. And, oh, bigger, yeah. There you go. So, multiple applications, right, in a single monorepo with a package.json and everything that you usually see. This is an RSpec application if you do front-end here. That is a bundler. And we also have the Zephyr plugin, which we use. That is one of the things we make. We make plugins for different bundlers, for RSpec, for Webpack, for Beat, if you know what that is. And the way we deploy things is unusual. It is not the usual thing that we do like on an everyday basis. So my way for deploying my application is simply building my application. So if I go to my terminal and I do pm build, whenever I build my application with Zephyr, Zephyr triggers. And what is happening under the hood is that Zephyr is diffing all the files that my bundler is processing and is uploading them to my cloud of choice. So you can see here my different applications building, and at some point I'm getting some random URLs, right? These URLs are numbered. Here you see that this application is the 50 time that I built this one. And of course it's failing because my network is not as good as I would expect it. But essentially, this is the way that I deploy stuff. Every time I build, every time I trigger my HMR, one version of my application is uploaded to the cloud. So if I open one of these real quick, I need to drop this down fast. Right. So this is, for example, one application that I deployed earlier. And the real cool part about things like this is that if I have a domain, for example, my production, right, like this one, this is the thing that I built for this demo, is that if I build again and I change something here, right, and I say, I don't know, like, hello, like this, and I build again, this website will eventually, in a moment, when this build, will automatically update with the thing I just built on my local. And of course, this URL is public, you can access it, everyone can access it right now and can see the same thing. And hopefully, if this builds properly, again, network is not doing me a favor here. Let's wait a second. Yeah, there you go. So if I reload this, hopefully, if everything went wrong, right, I will have a different, if I clean my cache, a different, oh, not this time, oh, this is keeping me in a bad spot, I'm sorry, but yeah, whatever, it will update if it worked properly, sorry, the demo issues. So yeah, the only thing that I'm going to ask real quick, this is a QR code for a Discord server, and every time someone joins on Discord and pop-up comes in, and I would really like to troll my boss with it. So if you guys can help me out and scan this QR real quick and join us, please, I would really appreciate it. So yeah, thank you very much.
Pues muchísimas gracias y nada, agradeceros a todos, pediros disculpas por el retraso que tenemos y por haber acortado la parte a la que seguro que estabais todos esperando que llegara. Vamos a decir adiós a la gente que nos está viendo por streaming y ya cerramos, nos despedimos.